Hello my friends! Today I'm gonna vlog about my first ever attempt at making a sourdough bread. I'm really excited about this one because I've been growing my own yeast for about 1 and 2 weeks now, and I am finally having my first ever sourdough starter to create this homemade artisan sourdough bread. The recipe that I'm using is super beginner. It requires for minimal kneading and it takes so long to ferment. The whole process takes over 24 hours before I can cut it. So I made it the night before to tomorrow's morning. So are you excited? Because I am. Without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing I'm gonna do the night before is to make the levain. So the levain is basically like the natural yeast that we cultivate. To this bottle, I'm gonna mix 50 grams of my sourdough starter, 50 grams of flour, and 50 grams of water. Sourdough starter adds a really natural and tangy flavor to the bread that you cannot find in any commercial bread. Later, I get this amazing, bubbly, and vigorous sourdough starter as you see here. So to a large mixing bowl, which I use this large pot, I'm gonna add 300 grams of water. The instructions said 300 grams of water, but I'm just gonna reduce it and add about 2/3 of it. And then we're gonna add in all of our sourdough starter. So the reason why I am not using all of my water at once is because it's easier to control the moisture of your dough. I'm just gonna add 400 grams of flour into the pot and again mix it all up. So the thing about bread is that you do not have to work it much. You just need to give it a lot of time for it to develop itself. It's like a child. You should not control and tame the dough too much. You gotta let it sit there and do its thing and develop itself. So as the instructor said, we're not trying to knead the dough here. We are just incorporating everything nicely into each other. And so it takes only several minutes to mix everything together. I used to make the huge mistake of over kneading my dough, like non-sticky dough. But what I should have done instead was let it just sit and rest. When it sits and rests, it will develop the gluten itself without ever much trying. The method that I am doing today instead is to fold the dough. Now the dough is nicely incorporated. It's still sticky, but that's how it should be. It should not be dry, it should not be too wet. It should be just the right amount of sticky. I know this sounds abstract, but you really have to practice a lot and get your hands in there in order to develop the tactile feel of the dough. Now we're gonna cover it with a damp towel and let it sit at room temperature for about 5 hours. In the meantime, let's have some breakfast, because the first thing that I do in the morning, the first thing that I think of in the morning is making this bread. So I haven't got time to fuel myself yet. So this morning I am just gonna have my normal everyday oatmeal porridge. So I have 2 kinds of oatmeal here. The first one is muesli. Muesli is like a mix of oats, nuts, dates, seeds, etc. it adds like a variety into your oatmeal. And then I would add in some more oats. So when our oatmeal is nice and dry like this, I'm gonna transfer it onto a bowl and pour milk into it. The oats will absorb all of the water and make it a very smooth and nice porridge. Some people say that oatmeal is bland, but I think that it is only bland when you do not know how to cook it. Yummy. Today is Sunday, also my get my things together day. So I'm gonna plan all of the tasks that I've been putting off throughout the week onto my bullet journal. The theme today is making sourdough bread. While waiting for the bread to ferment, I am doing some math homework and edit this video. After 5 hours, the dough has become much more round and it has absorbed all of the water. So let's say it has been tamed by the master bread. What I'm doing here is that I'm adding a little more honey and oil because I find that although the recipe said no oil or sugar needed, I still think that it would add so much more flavor to the bread. Adding oil also make it last so much longer. So as you can see here, I am folding the dough, just stretch one side out and then fold it in the dough. I have poked a hole in here and it does not bounce back immediately, which means that it is ready for baking. But before that, I'm using this paper cutter to like score my bread, one definite line across the bread. Ready? Go. I did it! Look at that. Look at the layers. I did it. Woohoo! It looks gorgeous. Let's get into the oven. Wow, it has just done baking. Actually, I can hold it with my bare hands because I let it sit for 8 hours. You should not cut it while it's hot because it will go stale very quickly. You should wait for at the very least 1 hour and at best at least 8 hours before you cut into it. Look at the bread. It looks so round and fluffy. Look at all of the bubbles. Oh my gosh. Looks so beautiful. And it smells great too. Like it smells a little bit tangy, a little bit yeasty. It's super, super irresistible. And I like my bread not so crunchy, but soft like this. Why? Because I plan to eat it throughout the week, so when I preheat it in the oven, it would become so much more crunchy. So I really do not need it to be super like crusty right now, because I know it will be like that when I need it to be. Now I'm just gonna stack my bread slices into the container to place it in the freezer and use it throughout the week.